The studio was a really interesting project. When Julie and I started talking about the set, my first moment was, oh wow, how am I going to fill this up with this style, in the vein of Frank Lloyd Wright? You can't even find the furniture. I knew really early on that we were going to design and almost fabricate all the furniture within that office building. And, we talked a lot about graphics and posters and the history of the building, started breaking down each room, get a lot of details of the building. I didn't want it to be too whimsical, but we just really worked on like the history of the building. The posters were a really great way to sort of sell the colors and the history of all the movies that the studio had made.
Hi, I'm Jamie Hitchings of Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify their skill set. You can learn more on filmmakeru.com. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on our YouTube channel. Every week, we interview a film professional, and this week we are joined by Claire Kaufman, whose work includes Little Women, White Noise, Oppenheimer, and The Studio. Today, we're going to be focusing on the studio, and the series follows Matt Remnick, who's played by Seth Rogen, a newly appointed head of a struggling studio named Continental Studios. And he's tasked with reviving the studio's glory days. And Matt's navigating this world of modern filmmaking and balancing creative aspirations with corporate pressures. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Claire. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to jump right in, and I'd like to know a little bit how you approach designing the sets that reflect the dual tone of like the satire, but yet the sincerity of the studio.
So, the studio was a really interesting project. When Julie and I started talking about the set, my first moment was, oh wow, how am I going to fill this up with, this style, in the vein of Frank Lloyd Wright? You can't even find the furniture. So I knew really early on that we were going to design and almost fabricate all the furniture within that office building. And, we talked a lot about graphics and posters and the history of the building. So I really tried to keep it in these sort of earth tones with these jewel tone upholstery. And then, we just sort of started breaking down each room and tried to get a lot of details of the building. Like if you look at the 14-foot conference table, I inlaid all the wood to kind of mimic the design of the tiles that she had done. We went as far as, all the chairs around the table. I didn't want chrome in there, so we powder coated all the chrome into a bronze color. So I don't know if that really explains your question, but that just is sort of like, I didn't want it to be too whimsical, but we just really worked on like the history of the building. There was a whole cabinet. I don't know if you really see it in any episodes, but it had all those old movies from the 30s with memorabilia and all the Emmys and, Academy Awards that had been won over the years. So, and then I think the posters were a really great way to sort of sell the colors and the history of all the movies that the studio had made.
I sort of got into VFX by accident. I always had a technical interest in photography and especially as it relates to movie making. There's something magical about the ability to believe something is happening when it isn't. So I went as a live action producer into a company called Bob Abel and Associates. Then I would have to, have a meeting about how do we do this effect that's in this commercial, and I never got the straight answer I was looking for. I have camera knowledge, so it's like, since it's kind of ambiguous, why don't I just grab a camera and we'll try it out. You have to figure out what tells the story and use every trick in the book to solve your problem. I am Rob Legato, and this is my course on visual effects.
It's a beautiful set. The whole Continental offices is just it's amazing. I want to live in that building for sure.
I think the biggest compliment we get is people say, "Oh, I didn't know there was a building like that at Warner Brothers," and we're like, "We built it on a stage."
Yeah, that's amazing. And to your point about the chairs, I noticed the chairs, and when I was watching this, I was trying to watch it from kind of a set perspective. And yeah, the chairs just fit beautifully with everything. There's these chairs with these higher backs.
Yeah.
And I was blown away by them. You could have told me Frank Lloyd Wright designed them and I would have believed it.
So it was such a great process because I actually worked with a set designer named Adam Mole, and he hand drew. I'd sketch out and I'd show examples and upholsteries and all the wood finishes, and then he hand sketched all those pieces out, including Matt's 10-foot desk, which was rather heavy, but I really it really needed to be this showstopper piece in the room, and I really think it worked.
So you were just talking about kind of the inspiration for Continental Studios, and I'd like to know, were there any like Hollywood eras or real life studios that inspired the aesthetic that you were going for?
I can't say that there was sort of one studio. I really did look at the history of Warner Brothers, Paramount, the big ones. And again, just tried to bring in like the big fixtures down in the lobby on the ceiling. Those kind of leaned into this Art Deco vibe. Um, just it was a little bit of a mishmash because I did also want to say, maybe over the years some things had been upgraded, but the majority of the pieces were sort of left over from, the 30s, 40s kind of idea.
Yeah, there's a throwaway line in one of the earlier episodes about Patty spending, I don't know how many millions of dollars like redoing the space. It
Right.
was, oh geez, I would have loved to seen like photos. Well, you know what I mean, fictitious photos of what it looked like before. Because
Right, right.
Patty's got some style.
Oh yeah. That was another really fun part of the show, was going to all these incredibly iconic locations, and wanting to do right by the location, but then also wanting you to believe that Patty lived in that house and that Matt Remick lived in that house. So it was a whole other part of the show that was really amazing to research and decorate.
So I noticed that the visual language of the office space of Continental Studios is very bold. And then we go to something like Patty's house, and Patty's house is kind of very open and um, brighter. And then we go to Matt's house, and Matt's house is almost kind of like a maze where you kind of have to figure out where you're going. Can you talk a little bit about their personal environments?
So with Patty, obviously that house is so iconic and beautiful. I really didn't feel like I needed to bring a lot in there, but I worked really hard to sort of give her a very soft palette. There were a lot of creams and mauves and just the right upholstery, and just really trying to pick pieces that were almost standalone for that house. And then with Matt's house, I wanted everything very angular and very sharp. We went with the idea after talking with Seth that, Matt spent very little time there. It wasn't, a lot of personal items. So I didn't want it to feel staged, but I just wanted it to feel like, a bit almost like the studio, a bit Crip like. He's not there a lot. He doesn't spend a lot of time there. He's out doing his mat stuff.
To me, it felt lived in but lonely, if that makes sense. Kind of,
Yes,
yeah.
well, thank you. That is what we were aiming for.
There you go. You got it for sure. And a funny thing about that, this is not necessarily in your wheelhouse, but their personal spaces kind of almost reflected their wardrobes. Like some of the colors that I saw Patty wearing, I swear I saw in her personal space, and Seth has that darker kind of tuxedo and everything. I was like, gosh, that kind of represents almost their personal space as well. So.
It's like I said to you earlier, it was really one of the most collaborative projects I've ever worked on. And Julie, the production designer, and Cami, the wardrobe costumer, we all worked. I make boards for everything, and I have trays with all the finishes, carpets, wallpapers, furniture, wood tones. And so you get a real sense, and we worked very closely, it felt like, with with Cami to make sure that, these people were kind of represented. We gave everyone a palette, I should say. And it does really work. And it's one of the great times, when you're super collaborative on a project and you see all those moving pieces come together. It's really great.
I felt like you guys were all very congruent. Like when I was screening it, I was like, they have to just have this like locked in relationship to where they're all just collaborating with each other.
Yeah, and that ran through even to lighting and everybody. I worked really closely with the rigging electric. They were amazing and phenomenal to work with. We talked about everything. And so it was just when you get, it's always so gratifying when you're on a project and you get all these pieces come together and it really, all of a sudden you've got movie magic, and it's fun to watch. And I'm watching it in real time with everyone. So it's I look forward to Wednesdays.
So let me ask you, was there any specific scenes or locations that might have had unexpected challenges from a set decorator standpoint?
Definitely one that we haven't actually aired yet, but we loaded into the Beverly Hilton for the Golden Globes, and the window for that was obviously very small. And that was really that was a lot of preparation and a lot of all the departments working together, because the construction had to go in and lighting had to go in and I had to go in and florals had to come in, and that was a tricky location for sure as far as load in, and really having sort of 24 hours to do the red carpet, which is actually a pink carpet. And so it was tight. And it's great though, because there was a plan and luckily everything went to plan. So, and I'm happy with the way it turned out.
That was an amazing set, but what was more amazing is how many people were in that set. Like it was very much believable as the Golden Globes, if you ask me. Great work. I'm sure you probably didn't sleep for that 24 hours.
Yeah, there was, yeah, a lot of coffee.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, and being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about. I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now. Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
Do you have a favorite set or object from the show that you're especially proud of?
Whew. I think, I don't know if there's one piece, but I am really proud of all the furniture that we designed and built. I have to tell you, it was, I only had a 6-week prep to do that show. Yeah. So that's why, I knew very early on, as far as filling up the offices, that we were really going to have to go into manufacturing quickly. So I actually had, I will tell you, one of the things I loved about doing the studio was working at a studio, because I had the metal department, I had the wood shop, I had drapery, I had upholstery, and then I had another furniture maker doing Matt's desk and some of the other coffee table pieces. And then I had, another person doing desktops. And we picked a trim early on, and sort of that's what all the furniture is trimmed out on. So you had this, it kind of all worked together. So I think just the amount that we were able to pull off in such a short prep, from conception to design to manufacturing, I'm really proud of how well the pieces turned out.
That 6 weeks is an amazingly short time for how congruent everything looks. You are amazingly talented.
Oh, well, thank you. Appreciate that.
I'm blown away. Like I can't do anything in 6 weeks, let alone.
All those years of commercials I did.
There you go. Yeah, get you going.
Yes.
How was working on the studio compared to working in other projects in terms of creative freedom and tone?
You know, it's the same, but it's different because it's just I had longer to sort of think about the sets. And working in television, this is the first time I've ever done a 30-minute single camera show, and it was definitely fast paced. So it is different and having to think on your feet a little bit more. And that's why I tried to get so much out in the beginning, and I did just sort of say, you know, let's do this palette and this palette and this palette. But you're kind of going through it while you're working on the show. Whereas in a movie, you have a lot of that stuff sort of figured out before you ever start shooting.
So what advice would you give an aspiring set decorator if you could tell them something that might help them going into this field?
I think what works best for me is being very organized. I might sort of work in an older school way. I take every set and have the art department give them in a 1/4-inch plan, which I then draw in every single piece of furniture and have all the layout done. And it really helps me understand what's coming into the room. So I don't have to get 3 sofas and I don't have to think, you know, it's great for my guys, and they have a floor plan and they can sort of lay in all the big pieces before I ever show up, especially when you're working on something like the studio. You know, I was over here and over here and over here. Uh, and I think really being able to work with other departments is also very important. Having an understanding about lighting and having an understanding about drapery, and really being able to envision all those things and what the final set is going to look like, which I really try to pride myself on. And then really one of the things that I love the most is, for me, is all in the details. You know, and it doesn't, sometimes it's very few details and sometimes it's a lot of details. And I really just want people to believe, even if it's a built set, when they walk in there, they believe that they're in that room. And I think that really helps everyone on the project.
Well, being familiar with your work, not knowing I was familiar with it, but being familiar with your work after I looked at your IMDb page, everything is believable. I would have to say everything. Big fan.
Aw, thanks. You know, it's funny though, but it's like, you know, we did a movie like Little Women, and, you know, we talked a lot about, we weren't doing a documentary. You know, we did push the envelope a little bit, and we did try to, you know, you know, make an interesting movie, you know, and push the colors and all those things. So it was really fun.
What I'd like to know is, what's your guilty pleasure film or television show? It could be something that is like your comfort show, or maybe something that you come back to, or something that you're embarrassed to admit you watch. What is it?
Well, I would probably say I would watch anything on HGTV.
That fits. That really fits.
And it's really true. And maybe some crime shows once in a while, but I really I love to be inspired by all kinds of different things. I'm still have a collection of books, and I get magazines, and I'm always watching shows, and I watch old movies, and you know, it's really amazing where the inspiration can come. And really my favorite thing is being boots on the ground and being in antique stores and going to prop houses and walking, because sometimes I'll spot something that I wasn't even thinking about, and then all of a sudden the whole set comes together because I found this one perfect thing. So,
Well, that's it for this week. You can check us out at filmmakeru.com or follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_you. I'm Jamie Hitchings, and thanks for watching. And thank you, Claire.
thanks again for having me. Really appreciate it.